How y'all doing? Welcome to the Blue Chip Podcast by fans for fans. This is your host Cody Potter. How y'all doing today? So we're going to have a fun little episode today. We're going to talk about a little bit of Terry McLaurin appreciation. We're going to kind of go over the state of this roster. We're about 3/4 of the way through the season. Hasn't been the season that we expected, but I do want to say thank you guys for everybody that tunes in. I appreciate all the subscribers, all the people that comment, and be interactive with me on the pod. I talk a lot on football's future and things like that, talking on forums, basically where we discuss Commanders all the time. We discuss the draft, we discuss a lot of things. I do a lot of scouting, and I'm very, very dialed into this team. I wanted to talk a little bit about Terry McLaurin, man, because there was a lot of angst and things like that about the way he went about getting his money, man. But ultimately, like, as a man, I always think about this, because as fans, we get crazy about how, guys fight to get their money. You might not agree with how people try to get their money, but ultimately, man, like, you sometimes you just got to disassociate the business with, your personal feelings, and that's what the players have to do because it is ultimately a business. But Terry McLaurin, man, think about, like, for all the bad years that the Commanders have had, this has been the one constant player for this team, man. And as you saw his matchup against, PS2, man, Patrick Surtain is the standard for cornerback in the league right now. You saw Terry McLaurin have a really, really good game against Denver, man. Like, just from, you got to disassociate the business aspect of it, man. Like, the man very much earned his money. The guy had to sit out and do certain things to get his money. The season didn't go the way that it wanted to, so there was a little bit of ill will and things like that, man. But ultimately, man, Terry's been the face of consistency for this team in a generation and era where this team has had zero consistency, man. These two jerseys behind me are the two premium players on this roster, man, moving forward for this team. Long term, it's Jaden Daniels and things like that, but like, leading up to Jaden Daniels, man, having Terry McLaurin, the steady presence that he has offered, man, like, you see how much having a premier level player, a true blue level player, how much it elevated everybody around him and things like that. Like, the things that he does, man, like, he's not worth this, man, but he has some of the best hands in the league. He is a premier route runner. He is a go up and get it, a physical wide receiver. He's not the biggest wide receiver, but he is explosive. He is dynamic. He can beat you in a multitude of ways. Long term, you think about the cap hits moving forward in 3 years, 2 years, you're going to be looking at about a $34 million cap hit. And yes, that sounds high right now. Ultimately, none of us make $34 million a season. So, a year at our job. So it sounds like a lot of money. It sounds like these people are overpaid, man. But Terry McLaurin is a worker on and off the field. He's very good in this community. Ultimately, Terry is the reason that this team is going to excel in this window of Jaden Daniels being in his rookie contract. And ultimately, long term, we have to do things as a roster. Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, they're going to have to identify a wide receiver that's ultimately going to take over for Terry. And that really was what this pod is about as far as going into the team building, dynamic and things like that. Like, we all know we need an edge rusher. We all know we need, younger speed players on the defense. We need a more, dynamic player back on the back end as far as a safety. I think that would clean up a lot of the miscommunication things that were very, very evident for this team early on in this season as the injuries started to pile up from the edge position due to not getting the lack of pressure that we've been able to get on the quarterbacks this year. Ultimately, we're year 2 of a rebuild. We had the second overall pick. We took Jaden Daniels. It was a clear hit. We see even this year in the games where Jaden Daniels has not looked like he looked last year, you still see the signs that this guy is a really, really, really dynamic player, man. You saw it last year, the way he exploded into the league. There's been discussions on our forums and things like that about maybe Jeremiah Love might be the best option for this team, not because it's a need, but because his the positional value is not there. You want to get an edge rusher. This team needs an edge rusher. It's a little too early into this season before we're even into the offseason to where you say, you can't pick a running back. You can't pick a running back. But ultimately, man, the things that Jeremiah Love and the things that we do not discuss about what Jeremiah Love opens up for this offense, as you see Terry McLaurin opening up a different dynamic for this offense just in one game of being back with Marcus Mariota, is a lot of narratives around Jaden Daniels this year have been he needs to play under center more, like Drake May has done and things like that. And you look at Caleb Williams playing under center and things like that. It's an element that they've added to his game. You saw him kind of struggle with it, and there are parts of that where Jaden Daniels does need to start getting acclimated to playing under center. We play a lot of shotgun, pistol, things like that. Quarterback having his eyes down the field the whole time, but it puts a strain on the run game. Adding a Jeremiah Love and having Jaden Daniels having the ability to play under center, to turn his back to the defense, to be able to hand the ball off to a guy like Jeremiah Love, and adding a play action element off of that would be a very, very big, impactful presence to being able to add that type of variant to this offense and things like that. It would only help Jaden Daniels long term further develop his skill set, because you can hand the ball to Jeremiah Love from the shotgun, you can hand the ball to Jeremiah Love from the pistol, but you can also run a more traditional offense from like the I form and things like that with a fullback and things like that. Jeremiah Love is a big, physical, explosive running back. He's the only type of running back that you can actually justify picking in the top 5. Like, I never really felt like Ashton Jeanty should have been a top 5 pick, because I feel like if you're going to be a top 5 pick at running back, you have to have that Bijan Robinson, that Jamar Gibbs, that Christian McCaffrey type explosive element to your game where you can run inside, you can do all the things that Ashton Jeanty does. He has a physical element to his game, but you got to be able to take the ball 60-80 when the play is there, like Saquon Barkley and things like that. Those running backs are warranted going in the top 5 because of their explosive element, because of everything else that they do in the pass game and the pass blocking and everything that they do. You add in the explosive element, that is why they are actually worthy of being a top 5 pick. And that's why I wanted to talk about Jeremiah Love, was because everybody's like, oh, we need an edge rusher. Picking Jeremiah Love and then waiting till the 3rd round to pick an edge rusher, that isn't the best thing for us. Well, let me just run it to you a different way. So we go into this draft, we have a top 5 pick. Top 5 pick comes around, we pick Keldrick Falk. Keldrick Falk is graded right now for me at, honestly, I have a 2nd round grade on him, but he's a guy that's getting considered in the top 10 because of his height, weight, speed. He's a guy that has like that Montez Sweat like build. He has that Montez Sweat explosive ability, but his sack production and the tape doesn't necessarily justify what you see from him from a skill set perspective. Yes, long term the ceiling is very high, but right now you also have a very low floor, which is why I grade him in the 2nd round. But picking an edge rusher just to pick an edge rusher because you need an edge rusher is what bad teams do, to where Jeremiah Love has a true superstar grade. I mean, it's not even just a blue chip grade. He has a superstar grade. He has a star grade, a gold grade. He is a truly premier prospect. You add that type of element to this offense in the backfield. Something that I always used to say about the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, and it took them years. It's not that they didn't try. They took, J.K. Dobbins in the 2nd round. They've taken running backs, but back when Lamar was a super dynamic athlete runner, before he had really developed as a passer, where Jaden Daniels is already more developed as a passer, but he's not the explosive athlete I think that Lamar Jackson is from a pure running standpoint. You add in that Jeremiah Love. You saw what it was last year with the Ravens when they added King Henry and all that. Like, that element of having that dynamic running back, that means your quarterback does not have to run as often as he does. The defenses have to account for a dynamic level running back. Then you add in the quarterback's legs around it, and then you have the level of passer that Lamar has ultimately graduated into, that Jaden Daniels has already shows he excels in, with a player like Terry McLaurin out wide. I feel like there's always stages of the roster build. You have to always look around the roster, figure out where you are in your building process. So if you look at this team, we have the number 1 receiver. We have the left tackle. And this year in the draft, we drafted Josh Conley Jr., who is showing that he is going to be a premier level right tackle in this league. The Chargers are very similar with that, where they picked Rashawn Slater. They came back and they picked Joe Alt. long term, that is going to be very, very dynamic for this team. They want to be a physical level team. Well, this team has drafted on the offensive trenches. We have the Terry McLaurin out wide. The reason Bijan Robinson was not the right pick for the for the Falcons at the time, the reason that only people say that the Saquon Barkley pick was a miss for the New York Giants at the time and he ultimately ended up somewhere else was because they did not already have the quarterback position solidified. This team has the quarterback position solidified. So when the Lions made their trade for Jared Goff, and they picked up Penny Sewell, and they picked up Aiden Hutchinson, and they picked up all these players, and they started to solidify their offense. Well, they picked up the linebacker position in Jack Campbell. They had Alex Anzalone on their team. They picked Jamari Gibbs in the first round, and people were looking at the draft and like, yo, you can't draft a running back in the first round. Well, that pick completely transcended the dynamic of their team because they had Amon-Ra St. Brown. They had Jameson Williams, the explosive element over the top. We have Terry McLaurin, who gives you the explosive element over the top. Also plays similarly to, Amon-Ra St. Brown as far as the physical underneath element. He just does it in one player. So you add in a Jeremiah Love. This is actually kind of the perfect time for this type of offense to pick that dynamic level running back where teams don't have that around the league. There's three to five guys at any point in the league, they give you what Jeremiah Love gives you. The Christian McCaffreys of the world, the Jamar Gibbs of the world, the Bijan Robinsons of the world, the Saquon Barkleys of the world. There's only a few of those guys in the league at one time, and Jeremiah Love is one of those dudes. The element that he would add to this offense with Terry McLaurin, with Jaden Daniels, this offense could truly be a truly special dynamic level offense. Does that mean that I pick Jeremiah Love if Carnell Tate is on the board, even though Jeremiah Love does have a much higher grade? It'd be very hard. I mean, honestly, more than likely, Carnell Tate is picked before Jeremiah Love, even though the grades are different because of the positional value. I like Carnell Tate for this team. I would be fine with either player, but when you look around, what would have the biggest impact on this roster? I think it's very close. Having Terry McLaurin and Carnell Tate on each side gives you a little bit more of that Bengals dynamic. Picking Jeremiah Love with Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin would give you almost like what the Lions have, but to a different level, because I think what Jaden Daniels gives you in the leg department and the way that he can create space and get away from pressure and sacks and things like that with our offensive line play, I think it gives you a little bit level. It's closer to what the Lions have and what the Bills have with James Cook and Josh Allen. Minus they don't have that wide receiver on that thing. So again, all the years that they had Stephon Diggs and all that and did not have the running game to go along with it, this running, if you added a Jeremiah Love, it would give you that element that the Bills had been missing all those years that they just fell short of the Super Bowl. Yes, we still need to address the defense. Free agency and things like that are going to be open to us. There are players that are going to be available, whether it's Jalen Phillips, AJ Epinesa, Trayvon Walker, Walker could from Jacksonville could be available for a trade. I don't really like the idea of going Trey Hendrickson. I think that's more of a patchwork kind of signing if you were to go that route, which is why I was not interested in trading for him, and especially anything over more than a third-round pick, which I had said multiple times this offseason the Bengals were never going to do, and clearly they weren't, because I'm sure they had at least an offer for a third, and they never made it. If we had made the trade for Trey Hendrickson, we would be talking about it more similarly into the Marshawn Lattimore type area where we made the trade, we gave up the assets, and then he didn't play but half of the season. So again, it would have been a bust kind of move, and I just didn't like it with his age, with his play style, and he doesn't give you that edge setting dynamic in the run game that this team needed ultimately. We were weak in the run, and we have manufactured pressure in the past with lesser players as far as that. Yes, he would have been an upgrade to that, and he would have been able to add his own dynamic in pressure as far as that goes. But I didn't like what it was because he didn't give you both sides of the coin. I think there are guys in this free agency pool that would be physical, dominant, run-setting edges that will give you more pressure as far as that, and plus you can manufacture the pressure around them. But again, this defense is 2 or 3 years away. And yes, you're going to have to continue to put pieces on it, which we will do, whether it's in free agency this year with younger players that have a little bit more, tread on the tires left than what we have addressed with so far. But having that Jeremiah Love on this offense would just give this offense. I mean, that would put this offense on a truly contender level, playing field. And I'm telling you, I think the dynamic that it gives us, because even without that right now, with Chris Rodriguez and Bill, and having an aged tight end and things like that, like this offense is very dynamic. It's very hard to stop. I don't think people actually truly understand how good this offense actually plays when they are healthy, even whether it's Marcus Mariota, whether it is Jaden Daniels, who, are very similar players, but Marcus Mariota does not have the level. He doesn't have the arm. He doesn't have the upside. And honestly, at this point, he doesn't even have the wheels. He is a little bit bigger than Jaden Daniels at this point, so he can play a little bit more physical and hold up in that level. But what Jaden Daniels gives you at the quarterback position with Terry McLaurin, we've seen it, man. It's deadly. It's very hard to defend. You add a truly dynamic running back to that level, to this offense. This offense is Super Bowl caliber level. I mean, we see it with Matt Stafford and Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. We've seen it last year when they didn't even have Devontae Adams and things like that, with Kyron Williams playing a elite level, a very top 5 level offensive running game. So again, I wanted to bring up Jeremiah Love and just where we are in a team building standpoint, because while I do agree you need a defense that can, get off the field and make certain stops, this offense has shown, even without that defense, that they can contend. They were in the NFC Championship game last year, and they just showed against the Denver Broncos, who are going to be competing for, the playoffs and the Super Bowl, and they have aspirations this year, that we can compete and dictate game flow because of our offense. We will supplement this defense with more talent this year. Getting the best player overall with whatever pick, no matter what our record is, whether it's top 5, whether it's pick number 12, whatever it is, it's about getting the most dynamic piece that fits this offense, one, and then gives you something that you do not have, whether it is a Carnell Tate, whether it is Jeremiah Love, whether it's, going the defensive route because teams passed on Caleb Downs, and again, that's not an edge rusher position, but it's about maximizing the value of each pick. Just kind of wanted to get into this because I felt like this team has kind of struggled because we have not had Terry, and I don't think people understand how good Terry actually is, which is why I kind of brought that up as the narrative of the show. That's why I started it that way. But I just wanted to say that this is the level of offense that we expected to see this team with, and that was without Jaden Daniels against the Denver Broncos. If we had Jaden Daniels against the Denver Broncos playing closer to the level that he played last year, playing closer to the level that we saw against the Bears without Terry McLaurin earlier this year, with Deebo Samuel as our number 1 and Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane as the number 2 and 3, I think realistically, I think this offense is a lot closer to being a top 5 level offense than people really understand. And adding a Jeremiah Love, a true game-breaking premier level running back who is a one of one basically. I mean, he is a Christian McCaffrey level. I can catch the ball out of the backfield. I can line up in the slot. I have the height, weight, speed to be able to run and handle the physical, nuances of the position, but he has the vision and contact balance and all the things that are just A+ level that make him a true blue level prospect. And just long term, man, I think this guy on this team would be like, you can't pick the running back. Oh, you can't pick the running back. Well, where this offense is going forward, you can actually afford to pick this offense, man. It's kind of why I wanted to do this show. I'm going to do the preview, look ahead to the Minnesota Vikings game this week. Like I said, I'm kind of going to wait until Friday, which is why I kind of just did this show for fun, just to kind of talk about where we are, as from what I'm seeing over the course of this year, going back and watching games, watching tape, looking at what we have. I think this team moving forward, I think that we do actually have the opportunity to be able to make a pick that says, hey, man, it's not the position that we need, but the position that we need doesn't have the type of players that are grading out in that level. Yes, Remain Jr. is grading out to be warranted of wherever we're going to be selecting in the first round, but he also has length questions and things like that. But if you're staring at a Jeremiah Love or a Caleb Downs who are going to be graded a tier above what those guys are, which I have Ruben Bain Jr. at a fringe blue, more of a red level prospect right now. That doesn't mean he's not going to be a blue long term. It's going to take time for him to develop as a player. But right now you have true blues that in this range we're going to be staring at. That doesn't mean we're going to be picking in this range come 5 weeks from now. if Jaden Daniels comes back, we look effective. We beat the Vikings. We beat the Giants. We might be talking about a different level of prospect come February, March, and April, into the draft. But right now, currently, I have to talk about these things, and I just think it's awesome that you guys even stick around and watch my pod. I have a lot of fun with it. Just wanted to give some different type of views and takes as far as the Terry McLaurin contract situation and going forward, and just having an appreciation for what we have as a team, because honestly, it's been a rough year, but as we saw, the week before this Broncos game, this team can dictate game flow on offense. And then we're doing it with Marcus Mariota, who at least allows you to continue to play the same level style, the same schematic game plan as we play with Jaden Daniels, but being a lesser player. And it's a backup, and we're competing in these games. And this is what I expected to see from this team from jump from this season. All the injuries have kind of allowed the defense to play, just play at a lower level than what we played last year. But this offense really is truly dynamic, and I think moving forward, adding another piece to that dynamic ability, you're going to have a truly special offense, man. Like, I don't think you should look at Jeremiah Love or Cornell Tate and say, oh, well, we need an edge. Yes, we do need an edge, but there are going to be edges throughout the draft that are grading very similarly to the ones that go in the first round that are going to be picked in the second and third round. So again, that's going to be up for AP and all them, his staff. I trust them to make these type of decisions. I'm just trying to give it to you from a different standpoint and things like that as a fan, someone who watches the tape, someone who watches a ton of college football, looks around and thinks about the team building, aspect of it, long term, maximizing each pick long term, because the draft is where you maximize the pick. You want to get the best player in each round, especially the top 3 rounds. Top 3 rounds you do not draft for need. The top 3 rounds you draft the best player that fits or transcends something that you're already doing to your scheme, and then adds an element above what you have or even use in your scheme. And Jeremiah Love is that type of guy. Cornell Tate is that type of guy. Caleb Downs on defense would be that type of guy, and that's why I'm so adamant about getting a blue chip player with wherever we are in this draft, if that type of player is available to us, because while they might not be edge rusher, while they might not be offensive tackle, which you do have Caden Proctor, you have the Miami offensive tackle, you have Fanu, the Utah tackle, those players are warranted. They have blue level upside. They have blue level tape. They have the blue level traits and things like that, even though I think the Miami offensive tackle is going to probably move inside to guard, and he's going to have a blue level grade at guard, especially for me. Again, you've drafted Josh Conley Jr. You've drafted, you traded for Laramie Tunsil. You see what he's playing at. He's playing at a blue level, almost all pro level from the left tackle position. You're probably not going to draft offensive tackle that high in the draft. But some of these teams that have the quarterbacks like Cam Ward and things like that, they're going to have to consider that, because they're having issues protecting them. Whether it is Tennessee, they have J.C. Latham. They've made a bunch of picks in the trenches before, but their trenches are still not playing to the level that you want. They're probably not going to have the grade on, Cornell Tate that they have on, Caden Proctor. So they're probably going to want to just solidify both offensive tackle spots with J.C. Latham and Caden Proctor. Both of those guys coming from Alabama, it would be a good marriage too. And it would be very similarly to what we have done so far with Jaden Daniels. Get in the protection first. We'll get the playmakers around it once we've solidified the protection in front. And I like the way that the Titans have set themselves up to be able to do that, just talking about it from a different perspective for where they are in their build, even though they are going to have probably the first overall pick, and Cam Ward has not had a great year, and you do want to get him weapons. That's what free agency and things like that will be available to them. They're going to have money. They're going to probably pay a free agent this year in free agency. I don't think there's going to be a wide receiver. There's not a wide receiver that's warrant of the first round pick. Jeremiah Smith is not coming out this year. So the Titans are not taking wide receiver at number 1. Could they take edge? Yes, but I don't think there's an edge like, there's the South Carolina edge isn't coming out. So again, you're probably going to look at a Caden Proctor, things like that, or maybe even moving back for a team that wants a quarterback if they value a quarterback high enough to move up, give up the assets to move up to the number 1 pick, take, whether it's Mendoza or whether it's, Dante Moore if he comes out of Oregon, things like that. The Titans could move back, but I just don't think teams are going to look at these quarterback, with the quarterbacks that have come out recently, like Cam Ward, like Jaden Daniels, like Caleb Williams, like Drake May. I don't think that quarterback's in this draft. I think the Titans are going to be stuck picking offensive tackle by the time April comes. I think Caden Proctor is a very good lock. Whether it's Fanu, whether it's Caden Proctor, pick your preference for that organization, whatever they're looking for from the offensive tackle spot. I think this is the first year that we get a quarterback that doesn't go number 1 in a while. And I think it's going to be offensive tackle because I don't think the edge level player is there unless it's Arvell Reese. But Arvell Reese picking an off-ball linebacker who gives you that Micah Parsons, it's a possibility now because of what Micah Parsons and certain guys around the league are doing. But picking an off-ball linebacker is just not something that happens very often at the number one spot. So again, I don't know if I see that necessarily happening ahead of us. So again, that's why I was talking about Caden Proctor and things like that, and that's why I think the Jeremiah Loves of the Cardinal Tates might be available to us if we are picking in this range if we don't win another game. But again, it's too early to predict that. But again, it's just another side that I wanted to talk about. So. Again, I thank you guys for checking out the Blue Chip Podcast. This is your host, Cody Potter. Have a blessed day, blessed week, man. Stay safe and, love your family and all those things, man, because there's a lot of things more important than football. I just appreciate you guys checking me out for the football. And, again, man, have a blessed week. And